Yeah.
But
All right. I am next with 3 6 Mafia. And in the opening montage, the name of the album is Mystic Styles. And in the opening montage, you heard Back Against the Wall. And now you're going to hear Break the Law 95.
Nigga reckon that's the 666 shit. It's so fucking thick, we gotta lay it down, we gotta stay, we gotta break your bitch. Coming up, stays on my mind, so we gotta drop a buster, a player hate nigga, or a crooked cop, run up.
Okay, Matt, what are the stats?
Mystic Styles by 3 6 Mafia. I think maybe I called it Music Styles in the opening, but whatever.
I don't
My
think
eyes
so.
are going. Anyway, Mystic Styles comes in at number 640 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 74 in 1995, number 3,796 of all time. It is 3 6 Mafia's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and 3 6 Mafia ranked number 2,223 of overall artists on Best Ever Albums.
Okay, this band's also known as 666 Mafia at times. They shout that out on the album a few times. This album came out May 30th, 1995. They formed in Memphis, Tennessee in 1991, so this is our first Southern rap from Tennessee. Members are DJ Paul, Juicy J, Lord Infamous, Koopsta Nika, Gangsta Boo, and I think I forgot someone. Crunchy Black also.
How could you forget Crunchy Black, Josh?
Unfortunately, three of those members, Lord Infamous, Koopsta Nika, and Gangsta Boo, are all dead now. They died in 2013, 2015, and Gangsta Boo died last year, 2023, unfortunately. But the other three are still alive and making music. This is a band that, as a result of being in Memphis, kind of started kind of like some other groups coming down the pipe, but it may be similar to Wu-Tang as well, where they have all these kind of like spin-off groups and like different labels. They started their own label as well and kind of have all these kind of different appendages reaching out into the rap scene of the South and Tennessee. So they have a bunch of different things that you can look into if you're interested. This is their debut studio album with 9 total albums. The last one was in 2008. Genres are Southern rap, gangster rap, or horrorcore. Influences: NWA, Ghetto Boys, Ice-T. Similar artists would be Scarface and the Ghetto Boys by default. Master P, Future, Ying Yang Twins, Wiz Khalifa, and some other Southern rappers. Stay Fly reached 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 2005, and the album Most Known Unknown reached 3 on the 200, also in 2005. During the making of this album, they said they were listening to music by artists such as NWA, Ghetto Boys, Willie Hutch, KRS-One, and Isaac Hayes. So Isaac Hayes is back as usual. During the development of Mystic Styles, 3 6 Mafia were engaged in a feud with Bone Thugs and Harmony. They accused Bone Thugs of copying their style, and they released the diss song "Live by Yo Rep Bone Diss," BONE acronym.
Yeah.
They've since said, I think it was DJ Paul or GCJ said that the feud was really nothing, and it was more of a misunderstanding, and the way that music came out at that time, like, they thought they were copying their style, but really they were just doing the same thing and their underground music, and they had heard that before. So it was all squashed and not really one of the more famous rap feuds. They are defining this album and group are a defining example of horrorcore. They are also cited as the forerunners of crunk and trap music, subgenres of rap. The local Memphis radio station wouldn't play their songs until they heard the song "Da Summer," which isn't on this album, but that became their first radio aired song. And in 2006, 3 6 Mafia became the first horror hip-hop group to win an Academy Award for Best Original Song for "It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp" from the movie Hustle and Flow. And I always remember them being up on they performed for the song at the ceremony, and I remember them getting up on stage.
I think that was a pretty memorable acceptance speech too. Yeah.
So the 3 living members are still active as solo artists, but they haven't released anything as a group since 2008. So I think this is the only time we're covering 3 6 Mafia. I always knew them by reputation and the Academy Award, but I never heard their music. So let's start with John and talk about 3 6 Mafia.
Oh, I had so many notes and you covered so many of them, Josh.
Oh,
I said, boy, like, I don't know who came first, like Bone Thugs and Harmony or 3 6 Mafia, but they're in the same lane, aren't they, to some degree? Like, sonically, I will say I like Bone Thugs and Harmony a lot better than this in terms of the rap. Like, I also wrote down this is crunk, like proto-crunk for sure, and I'm glad you brought that up because I'm there. Also, this very much presages what's coming down the road, which is like all of those Southern labels, like No Limit and Cash Money. Like the front of the album looks like that stuff, and the sound here, and much like those albums, this album is way too long. Like all of those like No Limit albums were, like hundreds of minutes long, seemingly. A lot, and horrorcore rap that I know we've talked about with Mobb Deep and stuff like that. Definitely heard that thematically as well, and even the beats that were chosen. The pluses of this album were a couple things. I did like a lot of the beat choices. That was the best part of the album. I thought they were kind of like cool beats that sort of set the mood. Now there wasn't even really a standout, I'd say, guys, in terms of like the MCs. I kind of felt to some degree they all were varying degrees of like mid. I didn't like hate any of them, but none of them popped out. Like in the Wu-Tang Clan, there's like 6 or 7 different rappers that I really like, and the other ones are like, good to like mid depending on your take, but not many, right? Like this, it was sort of like I didn't see a star. In fact, I couldn't even told you how many MCs were on this album because it didn't sound like there were 6 different voices here. Kind of even with like Bone Thugs and Harmony, where they rap the same way, you could tell the difference between like Crazy Bone and Busy Bone and Easy, because they have different like start-stop flows or sonic cadences. This was sort of the same thing. So I will say the beats were good. It was surprisingly well produced for like an indie hip-hop album. Now it's not super clean produced, but I was impressed. It didn't sound like quite as terrible as some of those old like No Limit and Cash Money albums sounded, where it was just like, oh my God, where did they record this? In like a parking lot or something? It was
like
just
a mixtape or something.
Brutal. Like Sonic. This was better than that. It had some similarities to like the Houston sound for sure. Like Ghetto Boys, not hard to figure out how there was an influence here, both thematically and sonically, and also the like directness and explicitness of what they're rapping about. I think probably nothing more illustrates that than the last track, Porno Movie, which got stuck in my head for like days. The core, not by design, by the way. It was not like I wanted it in my head, but like it has I would call a very direct and very lewd chorus that at first I laughed at, but then the longer the song went, it was just sort of like, it was like 5 minutes and 24 seconds. It felt like it was like 10 minutes for a novelty song. There were also lyrics in that, like, that were just like insane, like, just hilariously, like, blood, like the use of the word penis, by the way, in there, I always laugh, like rhymes with meanness, by the way. So I believe it's effing sluts, you love lick up on your penis because you stuck up bitches think you're witness to the meanness, I think was that specific line. They described something as a sperm robbery, which, I mean, the whole thing was just, but it wasn't kind of like Slick Rick or some of the stuff where it was funny. It really did sound like that Ghetto Boys track, right? Where like Bushwick Bill basically curated an orgy, right? Like, so the South just does sex songs, I think, a little different, a little bit raw, you know what I mean? Like in the West, like East Coast rappers don't really rap a lot about sex, and West Coast rappers sort of like rap about it matter-of-factly. You know what I mean? Like the South, it's like, I'm going to give you all the details in it. But there's a couple standouts. I really liked Sweet Robbery, was probably my favorite track on the entire album. Break the Law 95 was the other one I wrote down as a track I liked. I can't say this lane of Southern hip hop is my favorite. I do think it's influential though, because a lot of what we hear on the radio now and like the way that people rap and thematically and production, a lot of this stuff like carried over for years after this. And I even still hear some semblance of this in like modern music, believe it or not. So in that sense, I can see where it's influential, but it is crazy that like a group was doing this and a group like Bone Thugs and Harmony was doing something as well, and they seem to be unaware of each other, because it is seems to be a very unique way of doing hip hop. So it's kind of crazy that two different cohorts of people were doing like this style of hip hop in different parts of the country. So I mean, I guess the only through line would be it does share a little bit in common with like, you know, NWA's beats. So maybe that's the touch point. And obviously Bone Thugs was, you know, found and produced by Eazy-E, so there's even a connective tissue there. But can't say I recommend this one, guys. I was not a huge fan of this album.
Yeah, what about you, Matt?
Guys, I never thought we'd get to this point in the podcast. I kind of surprised myself this week. I'll start by saying, have you ever seen the movie 8mm with Nicolas Cage?
Yes.
I know.
Okay.
Way back when, yes.
It's from 1999, and that movie sticks out for me because in my recollection, I believe that is the only movie I ever walked out on. And this album is the musical equivalent of walking out on a movie, because I did not finish this record.
Oh, wow.
This is one of the worst albums I have ever heard, just on this podcast, in my entire life. This album is atrocious.
This is historic.
It is influential, and I hate it for that, because it made even shittier music after this. I hate this record. It was just I could not get through it. It's super long. I hated the flow of the rapping. It's got this lazy kind of delivery. I definitely thought of trap, and I was like, okay, I know I don't like that, and I kept trying to give it another chance. Maybe the next song will have a little bit of a beat. I think maybe Long Night had that pickup drum beat was a little bit okay. That was decent, but even after a while, that song kind of wore on me. Yeah. I don't like horrorcore. Bone Thugs is way better than this. Like I would much rather listen to Bone Thugs, even though I wasn't terribly high on that record. That horrorcore, I don't like horror movies to begin with, so I certainly don't need music sounding like horror movies either. And so you want to combine that with just like the rapping and just the way that they do the beats. It's just not for me. I'm sorry. It started with me going like, okay, I've got the gist of this song. Click, next track. And I did that for a little bit, and I was like, you know what? Nothing's changing here. I am not going to like this anymore. Let me move on and listen to Archers of Loaf again. So, big thumbs down. I hated this album.
I knew you weren't gonna like it, but I didn't know it was gonna be to that extent.
And I felt bad because I'm like, I'm doing this podcast. Like, I need to give every album a fair share. And even albums that I've hated in the past, like I've listened to the full way through. The only one that came closest was 311, because I hated that album too. But I only listened to that one once. Like even the Captain Beefheart album, I listened to multiple times. Right? So this one, I couldn't do it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
You didn't get to Porno Movie, Matt, so that whole segment didn't really... okay, yeah.
Yeah, I feel similar to how you guys... I mean, I did listen to it twice.
Me too.
It is a slog, though. I will agree. I feel like the beats... I really like the beats and kind of like the thematic... the theme that they're going for.
I'm with you, Josh.
Rap.
Yeah.
It is interesting. It does sound like... If you took out the rapping, it would be like... haunted house music or something, which I find really like intriguing for some reason. Now I'm High Part 3. I thought the evil laughter in the backing track was the repeating evil laughter, just like, I don't know, got under my skin. It was like really weird, and I do kind of like this heightened like nightmarish sense that they bring with the music choices. The laughter comes back in Sweet Robbery, the track that John although it's a different type of laughter, but it's like this evil like clown laugh now. So like, I don't know, it's like weird. Did you hear the Beavis and Butthead sample in Mystic Stylez?
I laughed out loud at it. Yes, way late in the thing. Yeah, like second to last song, right?
Yeah,
it's like Beavis and Butthead.
I did not hear that, Josh. Now I actually wish I did. That would have been a nice.
You can go back and listen to it. I think it's at the end.
It comes out of the clear blue.
Yeah, it does. I don't get the... I mean, I kind of understand the comparison to Bone Thugs, but they rap differently. I think the sampling is different. I think Bone Thugs is more influenced by like the like John said with Eazy-E, like either the West Coast or like soul samples more. I think they rap about different things as well. Like this is horrorcore because they are rapping about like Satan and like the devil and like evil stuff like that, in addition to kind of like the normal generic like crime and
Bone Thugs does
and
rap
things.
about the occult. They did like Mr. Ouija and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
but,
okay, that's a good
Well, they've
point.
got and some of the like the sound. It's got an eerie kind of sound.
Yeah.
This is certainly eerier than that, but there was elements of that in the Bone Thugs. I thought
Yeah.
too. Like
Yeah,
You could hear like the beat from Mr. Bill Collector like on this track.
that's
if you
a
remember
good point too. I do think, like to your point, Matt, I do think this is more horrorcore than Bone Thugs
Yes.
ever
Yes.
was. I don't consider Bone Thugs horrorcore.
Bone Thugs dipped their toe in it a
Yeah.
little bit. You know,
I
this
guess-
is like all in.
Yeah, and I guess from what I read too, 3-6 Mafia gets away from this sound like right after this album. They don't really stay in the horrorcore lane. It's such a specific. I guess I find it interesting because it's such a specific subgenre of rap. Like it's so like niche in some ways. Like the intersection of like horror and rap. I mean, I guess there are movies to that point, but anyway, I to John's point, I agree. I could not differentiate outside of Gangsta Boo, who is interesting that she's a female member, that we haven't seen a lot of that aside from like guest verses on rap albums. So I like that there's female representation, but I could not differentiate who was singing what. I do find that their style of rapping, that Southern kind of slowed down words run together style, like I could not, that made it harder to differentiate the singers. And yeah,
Also, if you like the following beat,
yes,
you'd love this album.
yeah, I kept questioning as the album went on, like, are they replaying a sample? Because it sounded so similar to what I heard earlier at some point. I couldn't, there wasn't a lot of differentiation there.
Bit samey, Josh.
Yeah, it was to the point where the horror was affecting my brain, and I couldn't tell if I was going crazy or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was tough to get through. I think, I don't know why it's so long. Like you could do half the album and get just as much out of it. I appreciate it for certain aspects and the influence on rap as a whole, but I'm not really interested in revisiting this. I'm glad it's not one of those albums where like, God, why I didn't get anything out of it. I got some stuff out of it, but it wasn't a hugely rewarding journey. So, but yeah.
My knock on this style of era of Southern hip hop, and we talked earlier about, like, I kind of said the Goody Mob represented like the Good Angel. This was, I don't dislike this. I might say about some of those No Limit albums, Matt, that I might be in the same category with you, because my roommate in college listened to No Limit, and some of those albums were
Yes.
just
I never heard of them.
atrocious. Yeah, just
You would know
atrocious.
probably some individual songs.
Make them
or-
say would be like one of the things, Matt, that you would know by Master P, and It Ain't My
Oh,
Fault.
Master P, Ghetto Postage. I remember that album. Yeah.
So
I do think Ghetto Boys is kind of a better example of this.
oh, for sure. Ghetto Boys is a
now-
way better version of this. Yeah.
I like that way more than this.
So if you're
I liked
interested
everything
in
way
the
more than
horrorcore,
this,
I
I
would
think,
just start with that and probably end with that.
Well, it's
I don't
because
know
there's-
modern examples.
There's
either.
like
Maybe
one really good MC in Ghetto
Right.
Boys, and there's another decent MC, right? Like Scarface is the really good MC, and then I always forget his name, and we reference him quite a bit. But that guy who rapped with like complete authority, remember,
Angry
like
guy.
the intensity like that was going on, like outside of like Ice Cube voice, like it's the most intense rap. And I have to remember that guy's name because I obviously know the third member,
Willie
Bushwick
D.
Bill.
It's Willie D.
Willie
Willie
D.
D,
That's
yeah.
right, yeah. But the other thing that runs on this style of music for me is the drum part on every song is exactly the same. What I just said, that it's after a while you're like, oh my gosh, like 80 minutes, it like changed the drum sound a little bit, and it's like it gets a little lazy for me as a style of music. It's like if somebody played the same bass line in a rock band over and over and over and over. Like for 15 tracks, they played the exact same bass line on
For
every
74
song.
minutes.
Yes.
Right. They just don't have enough kind of personality on this album as like individual members. I didn't feel like I kind of got a sense of who they were, kind of what they're about. They were all kind of rapping about the same thing. Their rapping styles kind of all the same, so it kind of all ran together. That was kind of another knock I had on it.
But I've had a couple Hall of Shame albums, and obviously this sounds like Hall of Shame for Matt. I wouldn't put this anywhere near the Hall of Shame for me. It probably goes in the not recommended category, but I didn't have the same visceral dislike of this because there were I did like you said, Josh, there was something kind of appealing about like the beat choices at times. So
Yep.
I will say I did like the Hustle and Flow song. I thought that was I did like that song.
Oh,
yeah,
and
that's why
Mark,
when this came out, I was like, wait a minute, what is this?
And,
you know?
Oh, and the wrestler Mark Henry's theme song, who 3 Six Mafia did too, is a banger wrestling theme song too. I don't know if you know it, Josh, but it's called "Somebody's Gonna Get Their Ass Kicked." It's a pretty damn good song. Yeah, it's a pretty awesome song. So yeah, you might even like it, Matt. It's actually
like
it's
the
very
title.
different than this. It's very different than this. So yeah, and Mark Henry was a former strongman who became like basically like the wrestling equivalent of like the angry black man, right? But huge, and so like it was a great track for him to come out to.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh shit.
Okay.
All
On
right.
to
Yeah, let's